My family told my kids that Santa skips broke little extras like them, while they handed my brother's kid a mountain of expensive gifts. My kid cried the entire drive home. On Christmas Eve, I pulled up to their house with something that made every neighbor step outside. Mom's smile vanished before she even opened the door. The gift bag hit the floor before my daughter's hand had finished opening it. Dollar store tissue paper, a pack of off-brand markers with one missing from the sleeve, a coloring book with a bent spine that had already been colored in on the first 6 pages. And on the outside of the bag, in my mother's handwriting, in black Sharpie, 2 words. Extra 1. My son Jude's bag was the same. Dollar store. Bent coloring book. A single candy cane taped to the side with masking tape. Extra 2 on the front. Across the living room, my brother Blake's son Parker was sitting in a canyon of wrapping paper. A drone in a box the size of a small television. A tablet in a leather case. A remote-controlled truck with a charging dock. 4 more boxes still wrapped. My mother was on her knees beside Parker, helping him peel the tape off the drone box. My father Hank was in his recliner, holding a glass of something dark, watching the scene the way a man watches a football game he has already bet on. Wren was 8 years old. She looked at the bag. She looked at the Sharpie. She looked at Parker's pile. She did not say anything for 4 full seconds, and those 4 seconds were the longest seconds of my life, because I watched her try to make it make sense inside a brain that still believed in Santa Claus. Then she said, very quietly, "Dad, why did Santa skip us?" My mother answered before I could. She did not stand up. She did not turn her head. She said it the way she said most of the worst things she has ever said, which is sideways, still doing something else, already finished with the sentence before it left her mouth. Because Santa knows which children belong to this family and which ones are just extras their father drags along. Parker is a Caldwell. Your mother is gone, and your father fixes furnaces for a living. Santa does not waste real gifts on broke little extras. Blake's wife Tiffany had a champagne flute in her hand. She took a sip. She did not look up. My father adjusted the footrest on his recliner. Parker ripped the corner off another box. Jude was 6. He did not understand what had been said. He understood the bags. He understood that Parker had a drone, and he had a candy cane taped to a dollar store bag with his dead mother's name nowhere on it, and a number where his name should have been. Wren put the bag down on the carpet very carefully, the way she puts down things she does not want to break. She looked at me. Her eyes were full, and her chin was doing the thing it does right before it shakes. She did not cry in the living room. She waited until we were in the truck. I carried Jude on my hip out to the driveway. I held Wren's hand with my free hand. I did not say a word to anyone in that house. I buckled them both in. I got behind the wheel. I pulled out of the driveway on Ridgemont Drive at 3:47 in the afternoon on December 23rd. And Wren started crying before I reached the stop sign at the end of the block. She cried for the entire 22-minute drive home to our apartment on Birch Lane. She did not make loud sounds. She made the sounds a child makes when she is trying not to cry and cannot stop. Quiet, broken, wet sounds. Jude fell asleep with his head against the window. Wren pulled Maggie's red coat off the hook behind the passenger seat and wrapped it around herself the way she always does when she needs her mother and her mother is not there. Maggie's red wool coat. She wore it every Christmas for 8 years. She bought it the first winter we were married at a thrift shop on East 3rd for $11, and she wore it until it smelled like her shampoo and her coffee and the lavender lotion she put on her hands before bed. Maggie died 26 months ago. The coat still hangs on the hook by our front door. Wren puts her face in it when she comes home from school on days that were hard. Jude does not do that. He does not remember what it smelled like. That is a different kind of loss. I watched Wren in the rearview mirror. Red coat pulled up to her chin, eyes closed. Tears still running down the sides of her face into the collar. I almost turned the truck around. I almost went back to that house and said every sentence I have been building in my chest since I was 19 years old. I did not. I kept driving. Because the thing I had been building that week was not sentences. It was something else. I install heating and cooling systems for a living. I have done it for 14 years. I am EPA certified, state licensed, bonded, and I own a small company called Caldwell Climate Systems that runs 3 trucks and employs 2 full-time technicians and 1 part-time dispatcher who works out of her kitchen in Kettering. My name is Grayson. I am 38 years old. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment on Birch Lane with my daughter and my son, and a red wool coat that belongs to a woman who is not coming back to wear it. I am good at what I do. I can walk into a house and hear a compressor from 3 rooms away and tell you whether it is a capacitor, a refrigerant leak, or a failing scroll plate. I can size a furnace for a 1,600 square foot ranch in my head while I am eating a sandwich. I do not advertise. I get work from referrals. My reviews are clean. My license has never had a complaint. 3 years ago, I installed a full HVAC system in my parents' house on Ridgemont Drive. 2-stage gas furnace, 3-ton condenser, new ductwork in the crawl space, smart thermostat, whole house humidifier, $34,000 in labor and materials. I charged them nothing. I did the work on weekends over 6 weeks. Gil, my lead tech, helped me run the line sets. I also remodeled their kitchen the year before that. New cabinets, countertops, backsplash, undermount sink, garbage disposal, $22,000. I charged them nothing for that either. $56,000 of work I gave to my parents because they were my parents. And because Maggie, before she got sick, had said, they are getting older. Gray, fix their house. It is the right thing to do. Maggie always said the right thing. She also always believed my parents were better than they were, because Maggie believed that about everyone. And that was the thing about Maggie that was both the best and the most expensive. My parents told the rest of the family that Blake paid for the renovation. All of it. The vac. The kitchen. Blake's name was what they used at Thanksgiving, at Easter, at every family gathering for 3 years. Blake took care of us. Blake is the one who steps up. I found that out 11 days ago from my cousin Sheila, who mentioned it at a gas station while I was filling my work truck. She said, Blake really did a nice job on your parents' kitchen. I said, Blake? She said, yeah, your mom told everybody at Easter. I did not correct her. I just finished pumping gas and drove to my next call. That was December 12th. 5 days later, on December 17th, I got a voicemail on my business line from a woman named Denise Blackwell. She said she was a claims investigator with Midland Property Insurance. She said she was conducting a routine follow-up on a water damage claim filed 14 months ago by Hank and Darlene Caldwell at the Ridgemont Drive address. She said the claim listed Caldwell Climate Systems, license number OHVAC 4417, as the repair contractor. She said the payout had been $23,400. She said she needed to verify the scope of work. I had never heard of the claim. I had never done repair work on a water damage job at that house. I had never authorized my license number on any insurance document filed by my parents or anyone else. I called Denise back the next morning. If this is the story you came for, hit subscribe to Family Secret Tales and stay with me. I called Denise back, and that phone call opened a door I have not been able to close since. Denise Blackwell was precise. She talked the way adjusters talk, which is carefully, with dates attached to every sentence. She said the claim was filed on October 14th of the previous year. She said the claimant was Darlene Caldwell. She said the listed damage was a burst pipe in the crawl space that had caused flooding to the subfloor and required full vac duct replacement. She said the repair invoice attached to the claim was on Caldwell Climate Systems letterhead with my license number, my EPA certification number, and a signature that was not mine. I asked her to send me a copy of the invoice. She did. I opened it on my laptop at my kitchen table at 9:15 in the evening while Wren was asleep in her room and Jude was asleep in his, and Maggie's coat was hanging on the hook by the door catching the light from the hallway. The invoice was a forgery. The letterhead was close, but the phone number was wrong by one digit. The signature was a version of my name written by someone who had seen my signature but had never held my hand. My mother had seen me sign dozens of documents over the years. She had helped me with my first business loan application. She knew what my G looked like and what my C looked like, and she had gotten both of them almost right. Almost is the word that matters. $23,400. Paid out by Midland Property Insurance to Darlene Caldwell for a pipe burst that never happened. Repaired by a contractor who was never called. Documented on an invoice that was never written. My mother had used my professional identity to commit insurance fraud. I did not call my mother that night. I almost did. I picked up the phone 3 times. The third time I held it long enough for the screen to go dark in my hand. Then I put it down and I pulled the county assessor's website up on my laptop instead. That is when I found the HELOC. My parents had taken out a home equity line of credit for $140,000, secured against the appraised value of the house on Ridgemont Drive. The appraisal had been done 6 months after I finished the HVAC installation. The appraised improvement value listed 2 items. New HVAC system, est, valued $34,000, and full kitchen remodel, est, valued $22,000. My work, my labor, my materials, their equity. The HELOC draw history showed 9 disbursements over 22 months. Every single one went to the same account. I did not need to trace the account to know whose it was. Blake's Bar Ridgeline Tap had opened 14 months ago in a strip mall on Route 35. Blake had told the family he had investor backing. The investor was a home equity line of credit built on work I did for free. Blake's Bar was failing. I knew that because Gil's wife had been there twice and said both times the kitchen was closed and the bartender was Blake's wife Tiffany, who does not drink and does not know how to pour a draft without 3 inches of foam. The bar was bleeding money. The HELOC was feeding it. And the equity that secured the HELOC was my sweat, my copper, my ductwork, and my weekends. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. Then I opened one more file. This one I had not looked at in 25 months. Maggie's life insurance policy. $200,000. I was the primary beneficiary. When Maggie died, I received $120,000. I had always assumed the remaining $80,000 went into a trust for Ren and Jude's education. My mother had offered to help with the paperwork because I was not sleeping, and I was not eating, and I was not able to hold a pen without my hands shaking so hard that the line looked like a seismograph reading. I had let her. I had signed what she put in front of me. I had not read every page. The trust was administered by Darlene Caldwell. The trust had received one distribution of $80,000 from the insurance carrier. The trust had a current balance of $4,112. $75,888 had been dispersed over 20 months in transfers to the same account that received the HELOC funds. Blake's Bar. My mother had taken $80,000 from my dead wife's insurance policy, money that was supposed to educate my children, and she had poured it into a failing bar on Route 35 that could not keep its kitchen open. She had done this while calling my children extras. She had done this while writing Extra 1 and Extra 2 on dollar store bags in Sharpie on the afternoon of December 23rd. I closed the laptop. I looked at the code on the hook. I looked at it for a long time. Then I called Gil. Gil picked up on the second ring because Gil always picks up on the second ring. I said, I need you in the flatbed at 5224 Ridgemont Drive tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon. Gil said, that is your parents' house. I said, yes. Gil said, what are we pulling? I said, everything I put in. Gil was quiet for 3 seconds. Then he said, I will have the crane arm on the flatbed by noon. Merry Christmas, boss, he hung up. The morning of December 24th, I woke up at 5:15. Ren was already awake. She was sitting on the couch in Maggie's red coat with a bowl of cereal in her lap, watching a cartoon with the volume very low so she would not wake Jude. She looked at me when I came into the living room. She did not ask where I was going. She has learned not to ask me things that would make me lie, because I have never lied to her, and she is protecting that the way a child protects something she cannot replace. I called Bud Kowalski at 6:30. Bud is 71 years old. He is a retired pipe fitter. He has lived across the street from my parents on Ridgemont Drive since before I was born. When I was 11, Bud taught me how to sweat a copper joint in his garage. When I was 17, Bud wrote a reference letter for my first job. When Maggie died, Bud shoveled my driveway every morning for 19 straight days. He never knocked. He never came inside. He left a thermos of black coffee on the porch step every morning at 5:40 with the cap already loosened because he knew my hands were shaking too hard to open it. On the 19th morning, I opened the door while he was still on the walk. He looked at me. He did not say anything. He did not need to. He just nodded and kept walking back across the street. That is the kind of man Bud is. He does not say things. He does things. And he remembers everything. I told Bud what I was doing. He said, "I will be on my porch." That was all he said. At 2:07 in the afternoon on December 24th, I pulled the Caldwell Climate Systems van onto Ridgemont Drive. Gil was behind me in the flatbed with the crane arm folded down. My dispatcher had stayed home with her family. It was just me and Gil. The van had my company name on the side panels in dark blue letters. The flatbed had my license number stenciled on the tailgate. The neighborhood was quiet the way neighborhoods are quiet on Christmas Eve afternoon. Lights in windows, cars in driveways. A man 3 doors down was hanging a last strand of lights on his gutter. A woman across the street was loading wrapped presents from her trunk into her front door. Bud was on his porch in his coat with a mug that had steam coming off the top. I parked the van in front of my parents' driveway. Gil backed the flatbed onto the grass beside the house where the condenser sits on its concrete pad. The crane arm made a hydraulic sound when Gil started extending it. That sound carries. On a quiet street, on a still afternoon, that sound goes 3 houses in every direction. The man with the lights stopped hanging them. He came down his ladder 1 rung at a time and stood on his driveway watching. The woman with the presents set her last box down on her porch and did not go inside. 2 doors down, a garage door opened, and a teenager came out holding a basketball and did not bounce it. He just stood there. My mother's living room curtains moved. I saw her face in the gap. I saw her see the van. I saw her read the letters on the side, the letters that spell my company name, the company she had used to commit insurance fraud 14 months ago. Her face stayed in the gap for 6 full seconds. Then the curtains closed. Then the front door opened. She came out in her Christmas sweater and her house slippers. Her hair was done. Her lipstick was on. She had been expecting guests. She had not been expecting me. "Grayson, what is this?" I was already at the side of the house with a socket wrench disconnecting the refrigerant lines from the condenser. I did not look up. "Grayson, answer me. What are you doing to my house?" "I am removing the HVAC system I installed." My voice was level. "The system is registered to Caldwell Climate Systems. It was never sold, transferred, or gifted in writing. I have the original installation contract in the van. The system is my property. I am taking it back." My father came out behind her. Hank stood on the porch with his hands in his pockets. He looked at Gil on the flatbed. He looked at the crane arm. He looked at me with the wrench. "Son, it is Christmas Eve. You are not going to tear apart our house on Christmas Eve because your feelings got hurt yesterday." "My feelings did not get hurt, Dad. My children were called extras by their grandmother while she was spending their dead mother's insurance money on Blake's bar." The man 3 houses down heard that. I know because he took 1 step backward and then stopped moving entirely. The woman with the presents on her porch put her hand over her mouth. Bud took a sip from his mug. "If you have made it this far, stay. Family Secret Tales is where the receipts show up on Christmas Eve." My mother's voice changed. It went from command to threat in one breath. "You will stop this right now. I will call the police. Call them. I have the installation contract, the registration, and a letter from my attorney. The system is mine. The police will tell you the same thing." My father came down the porch steps. He walked to where I was working. He stood close enough that I could smell the bourbon on his glass from the living room. His voice dropped low. The way it drops when he thinks volume is the same as authority. You are going to destroy this family over a furnace. I am removing my property from a house that was used to defraud my insurance, my HELOC, my business license, and my dead wife's children. Maggie would be ashamed of you. I stopped. I set the wrench down on the concrete pad. I stood up. I looked at my father. He was 3 inches shorter than me. He has always been 3 inches shorter than me, and he has never once acknowledged it. Do not say her name. He did not say her name again. Gil had the crane arm positioned over the rooftop unit. The hydraulic whine started. The sound was high and clean, and it went up and down the block like a siren. That does not stop. More doors opened. More people came out. A woman in a red apron stood on her lawn holding a mixing bowl. A man in a Bengals sweatshirt came out with his phone already up. Christmas Eve on Ridgemont Drive, and the neighborhood was watching a man take the heat out of his parents' house. Blake's truck came around the corner at 2:31. He pulled up fast. He got out with his jacket unzipped and his keys still in his hand. He looked at the flatbed. He looked at the condenser already disconnected and sitting on a dolly. He looked at me. What the hell are you doing? I am taking back what is mine. That system is part of this house. That system is registered to my company and was never transferred. It is not part of this house. It is inventory I installed and did not sell. Ask your lawyer. Actually, ask mine. The demand letter is in your mother's mailbox. Blake's mouth opened. It closed. He looked at Tiffany, who had pulled up behind him and was sitting in her car with the engine running and the window cracked and was not getting out. I reached into the van and took out a manila folder. Not thick. 6 pages. I handed it to my mother. She took it because she did not know what else to do with her hands. Page 1 is the installation contract showing Caldwell Climate Systems owns the HVAC equipment at this address. Page 2 is a mechanic's lien I filed this morning for $56,000, covering the HVAC system and the kitchen remodel you told the family Blake paid for. Page 3 is a formal demand for $86,400 in mortgage payments I have made on this house over the past 4 years at $1,800 a month. Page 4 is a copy of the fraudulent insurance claim you filed with Midland Property Insurance using my license number, my EPA certification, and a forged version of my signature. I have already spoken with their investigator. Her name is Denise Blackwell. She will be calling you after the holiday. Page 5 is a printout of the HELOC you took against improvement value that I created with my own hands. $140,000, all of it drawn to fund Blake's bar. Blake took 1 step backward. His heel caught the curb. He did not fall, but he almost fell. And the almost was the part that everyone on the street saw. My mother was holding the folder, but she was not reading it. She was staring at me. Her lipstick had been perfect 10 minutes ago. It was still perfect, but the face underneath it had changed. Page 6, I said, is a statement from the trustee account of the Caldwell Children's Education Trust. Funded by Maggie's life insurance policy. Original balance, $80,000. Current balance, $4,112. $75,888 dispersed over 20 months to the same account that received your HELOC draws. Blake's bar. You took my dead wife's insurance money that was supposed to send her children to college, and you poured it into a bar that cannot keep its kitchen open. And then you wrote extra on their gift bags. The woman in the red apron across the street lowered her mixing bowl to her hip. The man in the Bengals sweatshirt lowered his phone. Bud set his mug down on the porch rail and put both hands on his knees. My mother's fingers tightened on the folder. Her mouth moved, but no sound came from it. My father's hand went to the porch railing behind him and gripped it. Blake was standing on the curb looking at the concrete. I said, "You called them extras, Mom. Then you took $80,000 from their dead mother's insurance and gave it to Blake's bar." 22 words. I had not planned them. They came out flat and clean, and they landed the way a wrench lands on a concrete pad when you are done with it, and you set it down, and you do not pick it back up. My mother tried one more thing. She put her hand on her chest. Her fingers spread across her collarbone. Her knees bent a quarter inch. She said, "Grayson, you are giving me a heart attack. I cannot breathe. Someone call an ambulance." Nobody moved. The neighbors did not move. Gil did not move. Blake did not move. Bud, from across the street, said one sentence to nobody in particular, loud enough to carry. She did the same thing at the block party in 2019 when somebody asked about the fence. My mother's hand came down from her chest. Her knees straightened. The heart attack was over. It had lasted 4 seconds. I turned back to Gil. "Let's finish." The rooftop unit came off at 2:58. The furnace came out through the garage at 3:20. The thermostat came off the wall at 3:27. Gil loaded the last piece onto the flatbed at 3:41. I walked through the house one final time to disconnect the humidifier and cap the gas line. The house was already cooling. The thermostat was gone, but I could feel it in the air. December in Ohio. By midnight, the interior would be below 45 degrees. I walked out through the front door. My mother was sitting on the porch step, not standing. Sitting, her Christmas sweater had a sequined reindeer on the front, and the sequins caught the last of the afternoon light. My father was inside on the phone. I could hear him through the storm door saying, "Yes, an emergency heating call. I need someone tonight. It is Christmas Eve." He was calling vac companies. On Christmas Eve in Dayton, Ohio, every vac company in the Tri-County area was closed. He would find that out 7 calls from now. Blake and Tiffany were gone. Blake's truck had left at 3:15 after Blake had tried to say one sentence to me, and I had looked at him, and he had stopped. The sentence he did not finish started with "Grayson, you have to understand." He did not finish it because he saw in my face that I did not have to understand anything, and that the time for understanding had been December 23rd at 3:47 in the afternoon when my daughter asked why Santa had skipped her. I got in the van. Gil followed in the flatbed. The crane arm was folded down. The condenser, the furnace, the rooftop unit, the humidifier, and the thermostat were all on the bed, strapped and tarped. $56,000 of my work on the back of a truck driving east on Ridgemont Drive on Christmas Eve, while the neighbors watched from their driveways and their porches and their front windows and did not wave at the house we were leaving behind. Bud raised his mug as I passed. One small lift. That was all. The 8 things that happened over the next 3 weeks are not summaries. They are things. The first thing was the cold. By midnight on Christmas Eve, the house on Ridgemont was 43 degrees inside. My father had called 11 vac companies, all closed. He called a plumber who told him to buy space heaters at Walmart. The Walmart on Miller Lane was open until 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve. He got there at 6:12. Closed, he drove to 3 gas stations. One of them had a single electric radiator for $89. He bought it. It heated 1 room. My parents slept in the living room on Christmas Eve under 4 blankets with an $89 radiator and the oven door open. The oven was gas. The fire department would have told them not to do that. Nobody called the fire department. The second thing was the lien. The mechanic's lien for $56,000 was filed on December 23rd, the day before the removal. It attached to the property at Ridgemont Drive. When the mortgage company ran their quarterly title check in January, the lien showed up. The mortgage company sent a letter. The letter said the lien constituted a default condition on the existing mortgage. The letter said they had 60 days to resolve it, or the bank would begin foreclosure proceedings. The third thing was Denise Blackwell. She called my parents on December 27th. She asked about the water damage claim from October of the previous year. She asked about the invoice from Caldwell Climate Systems. She asked about the signature. My mother told Denise that I had authorized the claim. Denise asked if my mother had written documentation of that authorization. My mother said she would find it. Denise said she would wait. My mother did not call back. On January 4th, Midland Property Insurance referred the claim to the Ohio Department of Insurance Fraud Division. The fraud division opened a case file. The fourth thing was the HELOC. When the mechanic's lien was filed, the bank that held the HELOC ran a new title search. The title search showed the lien. The bank froze the line of credit. No further draws. Blake's bar had been drawing $6,000 a month from the HELOC to cover payroll and rent. In January, there was no draw. Blake missed rent. The landlord posted a 5-day notice on the door of Ridgeline Tap on January 9th. By January 14th, the bar was closed. The sign in the window said temporarily closed. It was not temporary. The fifth thing was the trust. My attorney filed a formal demand on December 28th for recovery of $75,888 from Darlene Caldwell, trustee of the Caldwell Children's Education Trust. The demand included a referral to the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office for theft from a fiduciary trust for minors. The DA's office opened a preliminary file on January 3rd. My mother's attorney called my attorney on January 6th. My mother's attorney said she wanted to discuss a payment plan. My attorney said the DA was not interested in a payment plan. The sixth thing was the neighborhood. On December 26th, Bud's wife Irene, who has lived on Ridgemont Drive for 44 years and who has run the neighborhood's annual Easter egg hunt since 1998, sent a single message to the Ridgemont Drive community email list. She wrote, "For those who were not home Christmas Eve afternoon, you should know that Darlene and Hank Caldwell's heating system was legally removed by their son Grayson, the one who installed it for free. His children's college fund, funded by their dead mother's life insurance, was used to bankroll Blake's bar on Route 35. The bags Darlene gave those children on December 23rd had the word extra written on them in marker. The email list had 71 subscribers. Irene did not editorialize. She did not need to. By December 28th, not a single neighbor had knocked on my parents' door to check on them. The casserole chain that Ridgemont Drive runs for anyone who is sick, bereaved, or in need did not activate. Nobody brought a casserole. Nobody brought firewood. Nobody brought a space heater. The street that had watched me grow up and watched me bury my wife and watched Bud shovel my driveway for 19 days looked at my parents' dark windows and walked past on the other side. The seventh thing was Blake. Blake came to my apartment on January 11th. He did not call first. He stood on my front step and rang the bell, and I opened the door, and he was wearing the same jacket from Christmas Eve, and it was still unzipped. He said, "Grayson, the bar is gone." Tiffany took Parker to her sister's house. "I have nothing. I am asking you to drop the lien. I am not asking you to forgive me. I am asking you to let me start over." I looked at him. I almost told him what I had found on page 6 of the folder, the part about Maggie's insurance, the part where his bar was built on a dead woman's money meant for her children. I did not. I had already said it on the driveway. He had heard it. He had chosen not to hear it. That was his. I closed the door the way I close doors in houses I care about. Quietly, all the way. Deadbolt. Blake stood on the step for 9 minutes. My neighbor told me later. He did not knock again. The eighth thing happened on a Sunday morning in mid-January. My mother was alone in the house on Ridgemont Drive. My father had gone to his brother's house in Centerville to watch football because the Ridgemont house still had no central heat. Only 3 space heaters and an electric blanket and a gas bill that had been cut in half because there was no furnace to run. My mother was in the kitchen. She was sitting at the table I had rebuilt for her 2 years ago. She was holding her phone. The family group chat, the one she had run for 9 years, 38 people, was open on the screen. The last message in the chat was from 5 days ago. It was from her sister, who had written one line. "Darlene, I cannot defend what you did with Maggie's insurance money. Do not call me until you have made it right with those children." My mother had refreshed the chat 11 times that morning. There were no new messages. The chat that had been the center of her world was silent. The kitchen I had remodeled was the only warm room because the space heater was under the table. She was sitting in a kitchen I built for her, in a house I heated for her, at a table I sanded and stained for her, alone, on a Sunday, in January. with no one calling and no one coming and no one asking if she needed anything. Because the street that had known her for 40 years had read Irene Kowalski's email and decided that the woman who wrote extra on a dead woman's children's gift bags was not the kind of neighbor who gets a casserole. Christmas morning in our apartment on Birch Lane. Small tree in the corner. Lights from the dollar store. The real dollar store. The one I went to on purpose because the lights were the exact orange Wren had asked for. Jude on the floor in his pajamas opening a box with a used telescope inside that I had found at a pawn shop on Wayne Avenue for $35. The lens was clean. The tripod was steady. Jude did not know it was used. Jude did not care. He pointed it at the ceiling and said he could see the moon. There is no moon on the ceiling, but he is 6 years old, and that is close enough. Wren opened her gift slowly. Library books wrapped in newspaper because she told me once that she liked the sound newspaper makes when it tears. A journal with a lock. A set of colored pencils, the good kind, 36 in a tin. She lined the pencils up on the carpet by color and did not say anything and did not need to. Bud came by at 8:15 with a tin of cinnamon rolls his wife Irene had made at 5 that morning. He sat on the arm of the couch because he does not like to take up the good seats. Jude showed him the telescope. Bud looked through it at the ceiling and said, "That is definitely the moon." Jude said, "I told you." Bud's eyes were wet and he turned his head so Jude would not see. Maggie's red coat was on the hook by the door. The morning light came through the window above the door and hit the collar at an angle that made the red deeper than it usually is. Wren looked at it once. She did not get up and put her face in it. She did not need to. She was sitting on the floor in a warm apartment with a journal that locked and a father who had not lied to her and a tin of cinnamon rolls from a man who had shoveled their driveway for 19 days and loosened the thermos cap because he knew. Across town on Ridgemont Drive, the house was 44 degrees. The space heater under the kitchen table was running. The gas bill was $14 for the month because there was no furnace. The lien was on the title. The insurance investigation was open. The Dawes file was active. The family group chat had 3 people left in it, and none of them had spoken since January 8th. Blake's bar had a padlock on the door and a 5-day notice curling in the rain. Tiffany had not called Blake in 6 days. Parker was in another state. My mother's sister had not called back. The neighborhood Easter egg hunt sign-up sheet that Irene Kowalski sent out every January 15th did not include the Caldwell house on the route for the first time in 31 years. On Birch Lane, Wren lined up her pencils by color. Jude looked at the moon on the ceiling. Bud ate a cinnamon roll. The red coat hung on the hook. The coffee in my hand was warm. The apartment was heated to 68 degrees by a system I had installed myself, in a building I paid rent on with money I earned by doing the work that my mother called furnace fixing. And that work was honest, and that heat was mine, and those children were not extras. They were everything. They were the whole point. If this story found you today, subscribe to Family Secret Tales and share it with the person in your life who was called an extra and turned out to be the one who kept the heat on. My daughter's name is Wren. My son's name is Jude. Their mother's coat is still on the hook. The coffee is still warm. The door is locked. The heat is steady. And nobody on Ridgemont Drive has knocked on my parents' door in 22 days. The pencils are lined up by color. The telescope is pointed at the moon. The coat is catching the light.